Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Girls for Greatness podcast. I am your host, Dahlia Perry, and you are listening in to episode number 172 today. I am so honored and thrilled to be coming at you again, to have you listening into this podcast. And I am also so honored and thrilled to be talking with Dr. L. Carol Scott today. Dr. Scott believes that relationships are at the heart of all our success. And we are going to be talking all about how we can hone in on this really important part of our lives. Dr. Scott is here to share her story as to how she got into this very important work. And she is also here to share her wisdom on how we can all embrace stronger, more self-aware relationships. Dr. Scott is a TEDx speaker, international best-selling author, coach, trainer, and keynote speaker. Dr. Scott's unique model helps to revolutionize success through self-aware emotional and social intelligence. The surprise in her self-awareness strategies is their origin in her first career of early care and education. Dr. Scott has a BA in child development, a BA in anthropology, an MA in early childhood education, and a PhD in developmental psychology. Oh my gosh.
So good at school. So good at
good.
school.
So awesome. Dr. Scott has mixed hundreds of years of child development theory with 21st century brain imaging research, decades of her own experience with hundreds of developing humans of all ages, and her own lived experience of recovery from childhood trauma and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. My friends, I cannot wait for you to hear from Dr. Scott, and I can't wait to dive in and hear more of what she is going to be talking about today. So welcome to the podcast, Carol. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Delia, thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted to talk with these folks.
Yes, I am so excited. So I know we just kind of glossed over this just when we jumped on, but tell us where you're coming from in the world and kind of just maybe a little bit about you before we dive into the nitty gritty.
Okay. Well, right now in the world where I am is the Portland, Oregon area. I travel full time in an RV now as an itinerant speaker, traveling around to different speaking engagements. So I'm on my way to Boise for a conference keynote. Left Mexico a few weeks ago. So out in the world and traveling, and it's cold here in Portland. No fun. No bueno. I want to go back to Mexico. It was much warmer there.
I get it. No, that's awesome. I love that. I love that you're nomadic like that and that you're just embracing that part of, your life and how that works for you. I think that's amazing. So like many of my guests, I know that, you obviously have your own personal backstory as to why you got into the work that you're doing, but maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that journey and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. It's interesting that a lot of people who come to understand trauma and recovery from trauma in their adult lives really come to it sometimes kind of late. So I didn't do anything about the mess of my life until I was 30. But I had already decided, or actually I hadn't decided, somehow the universe had decided that I needed to major in child development. So I went to college majoring in psychology. I thought I was going to be a shrink, and then I took this elective class called Introduction to Child Development. And it was as if some power beyond my recognition grabbed me by my spiritual and emotional shirt front and said, "Come along, dear. This is your path." And so I changed my major to child development without any understanding really of why I was doing it. But I got it. It was visceral for me how I got child development. It touched something in me. And so I pursued that degree. And then at the last minute decided anthropology sounded good. Same thing. Took an elective class and said, God, I really love this stuff. So I, was a smarty pants and had tested out of a whole bunch of classes I didn't have to take. So I got to major in 2 things in 4 years, which was pretty cool. And then I went into early childhood education, the care and education of young children in an educational learning environment. I worked in university preschools. And it was during that period that I woke up the morning after my 30th birthday and said, there's a disconnect here. So I'm this young emerging professional. I'm working on a PhD now in developmental and child psychology. I am seen in my community of peers as someone who is coming out as a leader in our field. I'm seen as authoritative, confident, and after hours, I'm a hot mess. I drink, I smoke weed, I go to parties, and I'm living a lifestyle that is very much not that of a young shining professional in her career. So what's up with that? And so I went to talk to a counselor about it. I said, there's just something wrong here. I don't know what it is. And uncovering the layers of repressed memory and pushed down experience that was my childhood, I sort of had to face all of these, what we now call adverse childhood experiences. And so I had physical abuse, I had sexual abuse, I had emotional abuse, I had my parents divorced. My father was an alcoholic, so there was substance abuse. It's like out of this list of 10 bad things that can happen to little kids, I have 7.
Wow.
And thank God I also had a whole lot of what are now called positive childhood experiences, because it's a balancing act. So one of the things I want to say right up front to anybody who's listening who is a parent is you will hear this whole conversation on 2 levels. It will be about you and your childhood, and it will be about your parenting. And so when you think about your parenting, don't, go right away to, oh my gosh, I totally ruined my kiddo. Probably not.
Right.
If you did things pretty well most of the time, you can mess up sometimes. It's the consistent pattern of relentless, can't get away from it, abuse and neglect that create real problems for people without any balancing positive experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's a really good point. So when you kind of started to put the pieces together, was that for you? I'm just curious because I know I've heard this too. Like you almost felt like you had blocked out those traumatic type experiences, or maybe those were just things that you just hadn't recalled in so long that you were like, oh my gosh, like this happened. And, because I think some people experience it that way, and some people, they don't have a memory of it at all. And it takes a long time for them to get that back.
Yeah, I had this very interesting phenomenon. The pattern emerged that the times when I really needed to remember some kind of real traumatic experience, one of my father's sexual assaults, for example, there would be another memory of that same day, something that happened earlier that day. And my therapist used to call them screen memories. It's like you remember this so that later you can remember the things you're not allowing yourself to see anymore. And it very often experience for me was about like an opening of a doorway or an opening of a little glimpse into something, just to validate there's something there. I would have a visual image of something, or I would have a physical experience. I would feel something in my body that said, oh, okay, you're getting close. There's something going on here.
Sure.
So yeah, I had to do a lot of uncovering, and some of it was really quite conscious. A lot of the emotional abuse and the physical abuse that was also part of our family, the ways that my father behaved when he was drunk, this, like, there was a lot of it that was conscious. It just was normal to me. It was just, that was the way things were.
Sure.
And until you get older and have an opportunity to see some other people, it's hard to know that that's not okay.
Yeah. Right. Right. So I assume kind of through that experience, you were able to, dive into that and figure out, how you can start to shift in your own life and how you can make different choices, make different decisions, view yourself differently.
And because I have the education and the direct experience with children, because I was learning about child development, and I was working in university laboratory preschools with classrooms full of 3 to 5-year-olds, I basically had a laboratory for my own recovery. And my therapist would literally say, well, you need to gain some of the social interpersonal capacities that you don't have that should have been developed when you were that age. Take a look at the kids, look at what they're doing, and see how that can teach you. And so eventually my knowledge of child development came together with my trauma recovery to create what I now call the SAS, your self-aware success strategies, because they are all 7 emotional and social intelligences that we develop between birth and 7. And they emerge naturally in our development, and we start using them quite naturally at each age that they come forward. And depending on how the world responds, how our grown-ups react, we either keep using the success strategies and get better at them, or we adopt a bunch of unsuccessful strategies as alternatives. Example, one of the success strategies I call independence. Well, the alternative is you're codependent, or you're somebody's victim, or you're a bully. It's like there is some other way to be interpersonally than successfully. And gosh, aren't a lot of us not being successful right now?
Right. Right. No, that's so true. Um, kind of shifting for a second, and that whole idea of relationships, and I know that's a huge part of the work you do and the strategies and all of that, but how, I should just say why do relationships matter to our success? Like what, because I think like I say that and I'm like, well, duh, of course they matter. But,
Yeah.
but I don't think we like really sometimes make that true connection.
No, we don't. And there's so many people who think that they do their lives alone and that everything that they have and everything that they do and accomplish, they do on their own. And it's
Right.
so not true for none of us, for anything we do. Everybody is getting stuff done through relationships, even when they're invisible to them.
Mm.
But, for the sort of fundamental rule of the universe is we don't do stuff by ourselves very much, really. And the myth of the hermit on the hill, doing everything alone, or the off the grid person doing everything alone, those people still have interpersonal relationships that they have to make work for them.
True.
And most of us live in a highly interpersonal world. We work somewhere with people. We live in a house with people. We interact with people out in our neighborhoods and our churches and synagogues and temples. Everywhere we go, we shop with people. We buy from people. We, sell to people. We have relationships with people all over the place. And fundamentally, if we don't have these 7 capacities, which are, by the way, to trust, independence, knowing who you are, faith, imagination, play, creativity, I call it faith, belief in things impossible, negotiation, the ability to get what you want, vision, the ability to set a goal and move toward it with enrolling other people in the work along with you, compromise, letting go of some stuff because you don't get everything you want, and acceptance, that sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes things go well, sometimes they don't, and you just keep going. Life is a perpetual roller coaster, and you just keep riding it. You don't give up.
So true.
Trust, independence, faith, negotiation, vision, compromise, and acceptance.
Wow.
Those 7 things carry us through all relationships.
So true. So you're saying in your work that, and I'm just curious how you came to that realization then that those things are developed at such a young age. Because I'm sure there's people that's like, there's no way.
No way. No way a 7-year-old is learning acceptance of the universe as it is. Yeah, they really are developmentally very much this is what I would call child development light. This is child development for the masses. So if I was talking to a group of people with expertise in child development, I would never make it this simple. But one of the essential, if you just think about a baby, a newborn baby, what is the strategy a newborn infant has to get along with us? Nothing else but trusting us to meet their needs, because that's all they have is needs. They can't do anything. So we come into the world and our natural strategy is to trust people to take care of us. That's not all that infants are about. There's so much more going on developmentally than that. And we know, in the complexity of the development of trust, it happens over a long period of time. But it's a great place to talk about where you first start getting your needs met, and that trusting people is about getting your needs met. It's a great place to notice that as an adult, you still have things you need from people, and you still need to get those needs met. And you might be trying to meet them yourself, or you might be trying to get them met by someone who's really incapable of doing so.
Right.
So we could make some difference in those patterns and make your life happier.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So how do we start to kind of, I guess, look at our relationships and figure out what's healthy and what's not? I guess there's that question in and of itself, what is a healthy relationship, and is it different for everybody, or are there things like for you that you think, well, this is like in general what I would say is healthy and what is unhealthy?
Right. Well, and there are certainly levels of getting into the depths of this, and the coaching work that I do, Delia, is about, I call it development do-overs.
Yeah.
And each one of the processes begins with a self-awareness exercise, a sort of self-assessment. What are you like relative to these things in adult relationships? How are you doing with these things? So in the realm of independence, then the next one after trust, that's the toddler's success strategy. So if you know a toddler, go with me on this for a minute, because this is just so clear why I called it this once you know. toddlers are all about just being who they are, basically. They have no
Mm-hmm.
brakes on any of their expression. Their emotions come out instantly as soon as they feel them. Whatever they want to say, they're babbling about from the moment they get out of bed in the morning until the moment they fall asleep at night. They, it's like what they want, they're going for, they're running after, they're picking things
Right.
up. They are a perpetual motion machine of expressing themselves, what they think, what they feel, and what they want. And
Hmm.
that is independence. That is the success strategy of saying, here I am, I'm Carol, I'm like this, hiya,
Mm-hmm.
all the time, all day long
Mm-hmm.
with no relief
Mm-hmm.
which is what the adult mostly feels like they need. Okay, so if
Right.
you come into that period being successful, showing who you are, but the adults around you, the world around you keeps telling you that's not an okay way to be, don't think
Right.
that. Don't say those words. Don't want that thing. That's nasty. Don't touch that.
Huh.
No, the world is full of no for
Uh-huh.
toddlers, for most
Uh-huh.
toddlers, right?
Uh-huh.
So they're like, here I am. I want this. I think this. I feel about this. And everybody's like, shush, 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 shush. You're too big. You're too much. You want too
Right.
much stuff. You take up too much space, kid. All right.
Right.
So what am I going to do with that as a toddler? I'm going to learn that the people around me don't like me the way I am, and I'm going to adapt, and I'm going to try to express myself in
Mm.
the ways that they say they show me are okay with them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in our independence as adults, are we people who express what we think, what we feel, and what we want, or are we people who curate what we think, what we feel, and what we want to try to please other people? Are we
Yep.
a people
Yep.
pleaser? Are we being codependent? Are we trying to get out in front of other people's opinion of us and change it and
Yep.
massage it all the time, trying to make them like us? It's like, what are we doing in our adult relationships is where all of it starts. This strategy exists in your history somewhere.
Yep.
How you doing now? And
Yeah.
if it doesn't, I've got specific tools. We look at dimensions. Are you like this or are
Sure.
you like this? Or we make a list of the things you need from people, and then we look at who you're getting them from. So we can take it from the sort of top of head level down pretty deeply into what's going on in your relationships that are important to you, and
Yeah.
then from there rebuild what the child would have built without the interference.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. I mean, I could just thinking through all of those 7 pieces to this. I mean, I feel like there's a story behind each one for all of us,
Mm-hmm.
and um,
Very
I can
true.
definitely see how that would affect then how we interact with others, how we view ourselves. Um, yeah, it's so huge, so important.
And
Um,
the first three, if I could just add
yeah,
faith,
for sure.
I think trust, independence, and faith form
Faith.
the heart of who we all are.
Hmm.
So, faith, trust, and independence come from a part of our lives in which we are very self-focused. The very young child is all about figuring out how their body works, how they work in the world. It's like figuring out the mechanics of life.
Yeah.
And then when they get to be 3, they finally sort of
Hmm.
notice the rest of us, really notice us. And they pick up their heads and they look around from contemplating their navel for 2.5, 3 years, and they say, oh my gosh, look at this magical world I live in,
Hmm.
where the moon follows the car as we go
Mm-hmm.
home, and where I want something and wish for it and I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Happens sometimes. It's like they start noticing that there is this whole world of activity that they can't explain to themselves and that is really rather wondrous. And they start imagining and playing and creating, and
Hmm.
kids become very artistic and fun at the age of 3. I think they're my favorites.
Right.
And so we really need that kind of creativity and play in our adult lives too. So if we have the ability to trust other people to meet our needs, we have a real clear awareness of who we are, and that
Mm-hmm.
other people are not like us, and that that's okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that there's an opportunity for us to play together, that there is a way to enter the world with a sense of wonder and awe still.
Hmm.
That makes for a pretty solid relationship if you have those 3 things together.
Yeah, that's so true. I love
So
that.
that's the heart right
Yeah,
there.
for sure. For sure. I can see that. Um, so the idea of self-awareness, I know you kind of touched on that just a second ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, talk a little bit more about that. Like, how does that play into all of this? How is that a factor?
I think particularly for people who grew up with trauma, but not only for people who grew
Mm-hmm.
up with trauma. There's also this category of adulting with kids that I call missed opportunities for development. It isn't
Mm,
that you did anything wrong. You just like the kid went by you. You just didn't see
mm,
who was there for you,
mm.
who was standing in front of you in this miracle that was showing you who they
Yeah.
are. You just missed it. And there was a chance for you to support and you didn't. And all of us adults do that a lot with little
Mhm.
kids. So, but a consistent pattern of like a child who just really never is seen for who they
Yeah.
are. They have one of
Yes.
those parents that wants them to grow up to be something else other than who they are.
Yeah.
Like I have family members who very artistic as children, but because they were boys and it was the 1950s, that was not acceptable. They needed to be sports and physical and
Mm.
mechanical and all the things the boys were supposed to be in the 50s. So when you get kind of told not to be who you are.
Sure. Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
What would you say? Because I know there's a lot of people who are parents listening in, then what would you say are I guess the things you would recommend as parents that we hone in on, whether it's, we're in a situation where our kids are still young, or if it's like me, my kids are getting a little older, um, just things that we can maybe adjust and really start to practice and put into play.
Okay. I'm going to go there and I'm going to start by saying you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. It's just like being on the airplane when it's
Mm,
going down. You need to do this work for yourself. You need to look
mm,
at how you trust other
mm,
people, other
mm,
adults. You need to look at how independent versus codependent versus
mm.
whatever other alternative you are. You need to look at all 7 of these in your own life, but particularly those first 3 before you try to foster them in a child, because otherwise you're just going to unpack your own baggage into the kid. So do your own work first. But then once you really get it, once you get what I mean by trusting people to meet your needs, then it's simple. Then all you do is start asking your child, what do you need from
Mm,
me right now? How can I help? What do you need? What do you want right now? I can see that you want something from me, because then children's
mm,
behavior always has meaning. And so we begin to
mm.
understand the meaning better. Once we get our own success strategies and we understand we have the self-awareness of how these work for us, then we can see better what's happening. And we can be one of those brilliant parents who says, I can see that you're trying to get my attention. And right now you're interrupting this conversation I'm having with so-and-so, but we can give you some attention in just a minute. Let me finish up here.
Right.
Okay, you're on.
Right.
What do you want?
Yes.
Yeah. So recognizing, seeing the child for who they are and
Mm.
enjoying what they do and who they are just as they do. Instead of turning up our noses at the bug that they bring us, or it's like it's simple stuff. It's letting them take the lead and following their interests and being as genuinely interested in stuff that they're interested in as they are. Every kid
Mm.
has a
It's
thing,
true.
you
Yep.
know, whether it's the dinosaurs or the beetles, the bug kind, not the rock group.
Right.
Or the rock
Or
group,
the rock
whatever,
group.
right, whatever it is that they're interested in. When we follow the children's interests and show them that we see who they are through the lens that they see themselves, you can't hardly go wrong if you pay attention to what children are showing you they need, think, want, and feel.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I almost feel sometimes, I know for me, one of the things I've tried to really work on lately is um validating, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
how my kid comes to me and what they're upset about or what they're struggling with, instead of saying like, that's ridiculous. Like, why would you like even care what so and so said?
Yeah,
Being like, I'm so sorry that, this happened, or tell me about,
that sounds
the
hard.
situation. Yeah.
That
Instead of
sounds
just
hard.
like
Yeah.
sweeping it out over the, sweeping it under the rug and being like, this is dumb. Like, why
Mm.
would you even care? So I
Yeah.
feel like it's just a lot of times it's making them feel seen, heard, and important, you know?
Yes. Yes.
So
And we do something similar to fellow adults.
yeah.
When they come to us to want to talk about something, and what we do is we make it about us.
Yes.
We listen only to respond with what's similar in our lives. We aren't really hearing them.
Yes.
It's like we have all grown up patterns of those things that kids do. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. That's
Yeah.
so true. I love that. So tell us a little bit, Harold, like what's next for you? Like what's on the horizon and where you're going from here? Because I mean, I think this work is so phenomenal, so important. Um, just, I mean, wow, it's great work that's in the world that everybody
Thank
should be
you.
tuning into.
Thank you. Well, I'm so proud of the fact that I've recorded more than 50 of these podcast interviews across a number of content
Yeah.
areas, everything from parenting and family to personal growth and development and business leadership development. And they're all available on my website, which I think is very cool. There's links from them,
That's
to
awesome.
all of them. But I'm on the road now to head to a keynote address in Boise, Idaho for the Idaho Head Start Association, which is a
That's
fine
awesome.
group of people. That's like parents and teachers working together on behalf of little kids. It's an awesome organization. And I'm going to be doing a training online tomorrow for a group of people up in New England, group of early educators. And I'm hoping to speak to some chambers. I've reached out to some chambers of commerce as I drive myself to St. Louis from Boise, Idaho, is the road ahead.
That's awesome. I can definitely see how, I mean, all the things that would be so, just important for educators and people in even the business world to have an understanding of, there's people who have trauma, people who are going to respond differently to things.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. And I'd love all your listeners to have a little bit more information about the self-aware success strategies. I've got a little 28 pages PDF cover to cover booklet that if they want to send me an email at carol@lcarolscott.com, I will send a copy of directly to them and add them to my mailing list so they can keep track of where I'm speaking.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we'll definitely have all of that linked up in the notes, you guys, for sure. So my last couple of questions that I always end my podcast with, tell me 3 words that best describe who you really and truly are.
Courageous, adventurous, private.
I like it. You don't seem very private to me, Carol.
I know. I hear that. That one is that one's a big question mark for people, but it's deeply true also.
No, I get that. That's really cool. That's good. You just kind of mentioned this, but tell me one thing that you're currently working on in your own life to improve or get better at.
Oh gosh. I am working to get better at representing love and curiosity rather than judgment and criticism. I grew up with judgment and criticism being the primary way to interface with people. And it is a long road to get over that. And so my latest is within my own family. I'm very kind to other people outside my family, but I can bring the judgment for my siblings, right?
Sure.
Even when I remember, we all grew up in the same cesspool of trauma.
Right.
We all shared most of those adverse childhood experiences. And still, I can look at their behavior and not just scratch my head and say, I don't get that, but say, I don't get that. Screaming it in my head. I don't understand why you're like that. Stop it.
Yeah.
And to bring the love, remember that there is no reason to assume I know any better than anybody else why they are the way they are, and to just relax about trying to change people and just keep being the love myself. Bring in the love.
Awesome. I love that. Great message. And my last question, tell me one thing that you're proud of yourself for being or doing currently.
I'm telling you, this lifestyle, I am so proud of myself for selling my house, selling most of what I own, buying an RV, and just driving out into the world and trusting.
That's
I
awesome.
am literally just sort of like the lilies of the field, kind of neither do I. I mean, I toil. Certainly I work a great deal, but I just trust that there will be enough for me and that there will be support for me and that this all will work. And I am so proud of the courage that takes. I'm really,
I'm sure. Yes.
Like,
I love it.
Patting myself on the back.
You should. You should. That's amazing. I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. This has been amazing.
My delight.
And I just really, really, appreciate you taking the time and just love the work that you're doing, like I said, and have no doubt that it is so going to be so impactful and with everybody that, comes across your path. So thank you so much again.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.